T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Citizens of Tech episode 66 proves that, like Schrodinger's cat, we can be both here and gone at the same time. Now that Eric and I have found compatible calendar space, we have cleverly cornered in canny cohesion the craftiest conversation starters we could connect with. So, Sutphin, slap down the stories we're subjecting our citizens to today.
Wow. Wow.
Loves me some consonants. What's up, grammar nerds?
Consonants. Okay, so today on the show, we have I was into typing before it was cool. GPS isn't accurate enough for self-driving cars. Fight the system. Privacy Watch. We've got some Today I Learned, some content I like, and
It's also content I like.
it's also content you like. So we have content I like, Today I Learned, and then some other stuff. That's basically how this show is.
So we found something on Kickstarter here, Eric. Typing before it was cool. What did you find?
It's a hipster retro-styled Bluetooth keyboard for your phone, tablet, other Bluetooth tappy device.
Retro style, as in like it looks like an old typewriter kind of thing?
Yeah, with the circular
Yes.
keys, and it legitimately looks really cool.
So like, okay. You know the old mechanical style where when you press down the typewriter key, it's actually a lever action.
Yeah, and an arm
you're
swings up and
hits an ink ribbon that then makes an impression of that letter on the paper.
So it's sort of that design, except there's no actual physical arm that swings up and
but
smashes into your device. But
Oh, what an awesome touchscreen application that would make. How awesome would that be?
capacitive letters.
Boom. Want.
But
anyway.
you know, for lack of a better word, rest your device on top of this thing, and then you clack away at the keys. Is it form over function? Yeah, it's probably to some extent form over function. However, you control the hipster factor with configurations and options.
Aha.
So this thing has cherry switches.
Yeah.
So you can swap these out for different resistance levels.
As in when you press the key, it's a cherry switch underneath that key press.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can pop those bad boys out for higher resistance, lower resistance, whatever. You can customize that. It also comes with two different kinds of keycaps, or can come with two different kinds of keycaps. One is the diamond keycap, which apparently went through 3 years of research and development to enhance typing accuracy and comfort despite typing angle and technique.
In other words, they had to research it because they made it look cool and now typing sucked, so they had to really work on it?
Pretty much, because the other option is the Chrome keycaps, which is full retro mode. They look really, really cool, and they're probably awful to type on if you're doing more than light wordsmithery.
Okay.
Like, I started watching this video because you'd sent it over to me, and I was looking at it going, wow, that thing is impressive, it's beautiful, and I bet it's terrible to actually type on. So, yeah, they developed those diamond keycaps. They have these rounded edges on the corners. They're supposed to be highly accurate, highly comfortable. I don't know. Seeing would be believing for me, I think, but one of the coolest things about this, in my opinion, is the macro bar. Mm-hmm. Did that trigger something in your brain?
Yeah, the mechanical lever on the side of the keyboard that you can flip up and initiate some action in the app. Yeah.
You pull up on this bar, and you do a series of key presses, and then you push the bar back to the normal neutral position, and you've just recorded a macro. And then when you tap the bar down, it replays that macro. And
that really is a retro nod to old school typewriters, because what used to happen is the carriage would... Now we're going way back in time here, but the actual carriage with the paper, and it would move. So the position where the letters would strike the paper was stationary, and therefore every time you typed a letter, the carriage holding the paper would move to the left, another position, and then you'd get to the end of that line, and you would actually engage a lever to slide the carriage all the way back to the starting position again. So it's not exactly like that, but it's definitely a nod in that direction.
Yeah, and well, fun fact to know and tell, that's actually why there's a return key on your keyboard.
Yes,
because it would return the carriage back to the starting of the new line, right? Okay, so what does this thing actually have? It has Bluetooth 4.2, which enables low power mode. They say that it's good for 6 months of idle time on 2 AA batteries. That's
Okay.
pretty good.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
real
know
good,
how many
yeah.
hours of actual, heavy typing you would get out of it, but
I mean, I have an Apple wireless keyboard that runs on 2 AA batteries, and I get months of life out of them. I don't even think it's 6 months, though. I mean, but when it gets to be months of life, you don't mind 2 AA batteries. It's fine.
yeah, get a couple of rechargeables and
Yeah.
you're good to go. This thing will pair with up to 5 devices, so you could have it paired with your laptop, your phone, your tablet, what have you, any number of Bluetooth-enabled devices.
I want to pair it to the laptop that is in the cubicle next to me, so that when I'm typing in my cube, I can control their system. That would be awesome. Okay.
Follow the white rabbit, Neo. What? How are you doing this?
So it's Bluetooth. Does that mean it works with everything, or is it selective at this point?
It
or?
pretty much works with anything that supports Bluetooth: Windows, Android, Mac, iOS, Linux. I assume it will work with Linux. They don't actually say that, but someone will compile
It's Bluetooth
kernel
pairing,
extension.
so-
Right, exactly. It actually, one of the cool things that I found on the site was that it has switchable key layouts for Windows and iOS/Mac OS. There's actually a button or a slider that you can flip, and the keys will change based on what position that slider is in. So if you're used to the command button or the Windows button, it actually will swap for whatever platform you're going to be using it on.
It's kind of reminiscent of, I think we talked about it on this show, that e-ink keyboard where the actual lettering of the key is e-ink, and it can therefore be customized for anything you want it to be.
Yeah. That's such a cool idea. It also features 4 switchable key layouts for US, UK, France, and German. French and German. So, obviously the layouts are different. So this is being made for an international audience. So they've built in, there's a selector. You tap it once for US, twice for UK, go on down the list.
And that's a Kickstarter. It's the Penna, Penna, retro Bluetooth keyboard. You can find it up on Kickstarter. We got a link at citizensofTech.com. If such hipstery things are interesting to you.
Yeah.
No? You're shaking your head no.
I want to see one of these things.
Yeah.
And if you hear this on release day, you could probably still get the $89 early bird package. I will not be getting it, but I would like to see one because it's a beautiful looking device.
I have no excuse to get one.
No.
And I'm trying to not clutter my life with more stuff. So, I mean, I have an iPad. It has a keyboard case. That's lovely. I'm very happy with it. So I have no excuse to get one. It just looks so awesome.
Yeah, it
the
really
whole
does.
steampunk keyboard idea. It could be back to was it Warehouse 14? What was the name of that show on Sci-Fi? Anyway, one of the main characters in that show had a steampunk style keyboard like that, and I just love the look of it.
I need that in my life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know what autonomous cars need in their life, Eric?
More HD maps.
More HD maps. Yeah, absolutely. More HD maps. So this article comes to us from Ars Technica, and they get into the problem of GPS accuracy. So, I mean, in your experience, Eric, how accurate is GPS? I mean, what GPS devices have you used, and what's your impression?
I mean, back in the late 90s, early 2000s was the first time I used a GPS device, and that was, I think, accurate to within 100 feet or 300 feet.
So this would have been
something.
with some kind of a Comport serial style receiver that you throw up on the dashboard or something like that?
Well, no, this was a handheld, one of those LCD screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
way back. And now, I mean, obviously I carry a smartphone, so that's my GPS device, and it's relatively accurate, but it's not always exact.
Yeah.
It gets you in the right neighborhood, which as a human isn't a problem.
Yeah, it's funny. I use GPS for navigation in the woods. I like to carry a GPS watch and my phone as well, for GPS stuff too. Distance, I'd like to know. Elevation is actually much more interesting to me than distance. I mean, distance is good, but elevation is more interesting, especially if you're working with a topographical map. So you can see, like, if you're bushwhacking, you could say, I want to stay on a contour line, because that maybe is how you're going to navigate through some portion of the woods on your bushwhack where there's no trail underfoot. So elevation becomes pretty key. But yeah, my experience with GPS is pretty much what you said. It's good. It's not great. And in the woods, it gets even more complicated when you're in mountainous terrain because you can't see. I mean, it's a math problem, right? Computing GPS is taking signals from GPS satellites, the numeric data that's coming down, doing whatever math it needs to be done with, and then estimating, essentially, your position
and estimate,
on the Earth.
Yep.
And so the more satellites it can see and signals it can therefore use in the math, the more accurate the position is. The fewer satellites it can see, say there's a skyscraper in the way. Have you ever noticed this walking down the street of a city? Your GPS is just crap. It really
Just
doesn't know
gone.
where you are.
Yeah.
So it thinks I'm a block away. Why? It doesn't know what direction I'm walking. Why? Because it can't see the satellites. There's too many tall buildings around. Same thing in the mountains. There's mountains around. You're down in the valley. Doesn't work so good.
Yep.
Okay, autonomous vehicles then. So the way they navigate, LiDAR, radar, combinations of those signals come together, and then software figures out the environment around it and then knows how to react. But but GPS just simply isn't accurate enough, and so now there's a movement for essentially remapping the transportation systems of the world with super high degree HD maps. So, to quote the article, fully aware of this need to have extremely detailed data, mapping data available for the autonomous vehicle software. Fully aware of this need, car makers like BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, and Ford have been voting with their wallets. They are investing in companies like Here, that's the name of one company, and Civil Maps, another company, that are building the platforms and gathering the data required, and the end result will be a high-definition 3D map of our road networks and everything within a few meters of them that is constantly updated by vehicles as they drive along. So they talked about the vehicles that are now remapping some of these roads.
So it's like they're doing an initial data load, but then after the initial data load, they're crowdsourcing.
Yeah, exactly. So the article says that these better maps, these high def maps, start with 96 megapixel camera arrays and then a 32 beam LiDAR array that are going to provide a 3D scan of the roads. That's step one. You get super, as they put it, putting the Bing and Google streetcar maps and the camera arrays that they're using to shame.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of detail that they're getting.
Sure.
And then, you get two-way information. It's not just you download this to your car and your car uses it, but your car has got, especially autonomous cars, have all these sensors on them that know what's going on in the world around them and then can take the information that they're scanning, upload it back to the cloud through its LTE connection, whatever it's got, presumably LTE, more and more common. And then all the cars streaming all that information back into the cloud. They're talking about using machine learning algorithms that take all that data and then apply it to the maps so that everybody's updated. It's like a much more advanced version of what Waze is doing, or Apple Maps with the traffic data.
I just had a bit of a brainwave while you were describing this. So thinking about your autonomous cars that are going to be driving around, analyzing, submitting all this data. We live in New England, where we have potholes.
Oh, do we? Yes.
So
boy.
autonomous cars would be able to share with the other autonomous cars where potholes are so that they could avoid them, first of all. Second of all...
If you're scanning road surface, I don't see why not.
Second of all, they could report to local civil servants where said potholes are so that they could be patched.
This is where my tire came off the rim.
Right.
Right here.
Yeah.
Fix that, please.
Yeah. Like, that's real time.
But there's that. There's, things like road closures that are happening.
Sure.
Some of that information they'll be able to pull out of townships and cities that know ahead of time when work's going to be done, and they can include that. But then there's just things happen. There's accidents happen. There's road closures. There's flooding. Natural events that impact transportation. All of that can be seen by autonomous vehicles, sent up to the cloud, and then the cloud digests that information and sends it back down to all the real-time maps that everybody knows.
And we have a lesser version of that right now with existing GPS apps where it'll reroute you. It'll say, oh, well, there's an accident, so we're going to reroute you. It's going to save you 7 minutes to go this alternate route. But this takes it a whole new direction, another level.
It's very cool, and it's not like it's super far away. They're talking about 2020 when they're expecting this data to be online and in use by actual autonomous vehicles on the roads. It's 2017 as we record this. So we're talking about roughly a 3-year time frame that this is reality.
That's a lot of data to crunch.
It's funny you bring that up because I was thinking about that. How much data? It doesn't have to be visual, right?
True.
And they were talking about being able to download 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer squares of data, tiles of data. How much is that? They didn't get into how much that is. In theory, if you're presenting it to a software, it's numbers or a set of metadata and numbers in some way.
Vertices and
and so I guess it doesn't have to be a lot of data.
True.
Because 2K by 2K, I mean, how much of that is navigable road?
Right.
Maybe a lot, maybe very little.
And maybe most of the data is going to be in, who knows, XML or something.
But it did occur to me, geez, just how much data are we talking about?
But I mean, like the algorithm's going to have to analyze a lot of information in real time, obviously. How are we going to have supercomputers on board these autonomous cars?
We're going to have NVIDIA GPUs on board. NVIDIA's getting in on this. To do the number crunching.
New application for their chipsets, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So not for graphics rendering, but for number crunching.
Right,
and
because
this
ridiculous floating point operations.
A huge new market for NVIDIA. They've been getting into the machine learning space. And so, yeah, absolutely. There is number crunching involved, and NVIDIA are the people that are going to help make it a reality.
Very cool.
So yeah. All right, Eric. So now we go from GPS to fighting the system. I see what you did here. You played a play on words with STEM.
Fighting the STEM. Yes. This comes to us via Ars Technica. The article basically leads off talking about someone named Tracy Van Houten, a systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratories. She's been with NASA for 13 years, and she's worked on the Mars Curiosity rover, among other amazing projects. Obviously, she works for JPL. However, she's looking at walking away from her dream job to try and push anti-intellectualism out of Washington.
Does she have a bulldozer? She'll need a really big bulldozer.
Really big shovel. Yeah. She's looking at running for the 34th Congressional District of California, but she's one of over 20 considering a run for it, so the campaign will be tough. And that's where the article really sort of goes, because it talks about how she's not alone. There's been an upswing in the number of highly educated STEM-employed folks looking at getting into the political world, and how they have no idea how to run a political campaign.
And they need money too. It's not just knowing how to run a campaign. It's having the money to be able to run a successful campaign. Since we more or less live in an oligarchy.
Yeah, I mean, you need money, and you need to know how to spend it and how not to spend it, and how to run this campaign and fund it. And that is where 314action.org comes in. And the 314 is a reference to 3.14, the short version of pi. From their website, they describe themselves as, quote, "We are members of the STEM community, grassroots supporters, and political activists committed to bringing innovation to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, aggressively advocate for real solutions to climate change, and elect more STEM-trained candidates to public office."
So 314action.org, not just her site. This is a site that she is trying to leverage to raise funds?
It's not even her site. This is an organization that is supporting people like
Tracy Van Houten.
Right, exactly. Okay. Scientists and engineers that are seeking public office here in the United States. They feature, part of their site is called Under the Scope, and they say, "Our mission is to put members of Congress who are anti-science under the scope. By scrutinizing their actions and voting record that go against the facts and data, we will bring attention to practices and policies that are decidedly anti-science. It's no longer the time to sit idly by as partisan motives are promoted in direct opposition to leading scientific consensus on topics such as climate change, clean energy, and evolution. 314 Action is committed to holding these members accountable for their actions and their votes." And they're offering support and training to STEM folks in running a campaign for local and national offices.
Okay, so you're a scientist, now you want to run for office, and you have no idea what you're doing. We're here to help.
Yep, that's exactly what they're doing. So their whole mission is to get educated people, scientifically literate and technically literate people into office.
It's two-pronged. It's because they are holding anti-intellectual, anti-science folks accountable. So as they put it, against voting record that go against the facts and data.
Right.
That's a very interesting phrase to me. It's very well chosen. Very well chosen. If you go against the facts and data, we're going to go, you voted against that, and there's reasons where you might vote against things. Unfortunately, facts and data isn't always the only thing that matters, sadly.
Rider
But still,
bills and stuff gets buried in there that you just can't vote for or whatever.
Exactly. Politics is complicated, but at least now you with a track record with something like this, you could find the people who are habitually
career in the pocket or anti climate change, people that are in big oil pockets, things like that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that they're trying to do here. So it's a really interesting organization. They stated, actually, I didn't write this into this show, but they had over 3,000 inquiries from people in the STEM industry looking to get into political office, at least exploring the options since January. So this is in 4 months.
Wow.
They've had 3,000 people get in contact already. So it's an interesting movement, if nothing else. I know there's no question in my mind that here in the United States we need more scientifically and technically literate.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I'd want everybody to be a scientist in office, right? But you want it to be fairly represented.
And well, that's the thing, because Congress is largely peopled by lawyers and business people.
Yes.
That's about it. There's one physicist. I was reading in the article. One physicist has made it into Congress. Everyone else is a lawyer or a wealthy business person that knows how to run a business, essentially, and then goes into Congress and gets lobbied and lobbied and lobbied.
It's funny, you those people are voted on in our Republic, not Republican so much, but Republic, to represent the broad interests, and they may or they may not. It just feels like if that is the propensity of candidates, their lawyers and their business people, that's a pretty narrow slice of society, honestly.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, right?
Sure.
Like that's the message of that movie. He's just a common guy that goes to Washington to be part of the government, but you don't see that in modern American politics.
Well, then something else Congress did interesting recently here, as we move to our Privacy Watch segment. They passed a bill saying very roughly that it was proposed. I don't even know.
Repealed a bill or something.
Something.
Right?
Yeah. It's about who can sell your data to whom, as far as your internet data and your browsing data and so on. And this made news, I think, because a lot of people said, "Oh no, my ISP can now say, Bob Smith surfed these websites and went to these places and did these things with his internet connection, and here's all of Bob Smith's data." It doesn't work like that, and that's I think it's
a common misunderstanding.
That's really and it's the thrust of our story here, is to kind of dispel some of the notion. There's a couple of stories from techdirt.com that cover this. One of them is titled very simply, "No, you can't buy Congress's internet data or anyone else's." And the whole Congress's data there was a petition out saying, well, we're going to get a bunch of money and buy all our every congressman that voted for or against the bill, as the case may be, whatever it was, and look at their data to see what they're doing, see how they like it. And it's like, it doesn't work like that, okay? So let's Eric, you and I are IT nerds. Let's talk IT nerdery for a little bit here. There are, as we would know, a lot of ways you can track browsing behavior. That is possible. For example, cookies. So when you go to a website, you're using a protocol called Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, and one of the functions of that protocol is the ability to stick a cookie into the data stream. So you go to request a web page, and the web page comes back to you not just with the web page you requested, but also with a cookie. And that cookie sits on your computer, and it's got something in it, something trackable that can be retrieved later. Hey, I set a cookie a while ago, and it lives on your computer. Send me back that cookie. And there's various ways that cookies work, various kinds of data that can be in there. If you can clear them off your browser, you can open them up in a text file, look at them in some cases, and see what's in there. You can
reject them.
You can reject them, yes.
If you configure your browser to do so.
Exactly. But that's a very common way that what is happening with your browser as you go from site to site is being tracked. And the site you visited may have pieces and parts to it from 5, 10, 15, 20 different companies that are delivering ads, that are providing tracking services. It's not just like went to myfavoritnewssite.com. Well, yourfavoritnewssite.com is not the only person sending you data when you retrieve that page, because that page is made up of all these different individual pieces and parts and components that include all of this other data and are setting cookies and doing things.
They might be aggregating content from another site, that's being pulled in from elsewhere, and then you've got fonts coming from Google, and you've got type kits coming from Adobe or whatever. Yeah.
And ads being served up from one or more or several different ad networks. You've got those teaser articles that show up at the bottom of your website to say, you won't believe what Taylor Swift wore to the whatever, and the kind of the junk articles that are just wildly compulsive. You just desperately want to click on them. Those are all delivered from different places.
Yep.
They come from different websites, and a lot of them are ad trackers. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of them may not even be visible. There may be things delivered to your browser that you never see displayed on the screen. They can just be sitting there in the background because they are tracking you, but they're not tracking you.
Right.
They're tracking your behavior. Yep. Is a better way to put it. So it doesn't know, Ethan Banks or Eric Sutphin or Bob Smith or but it has a sense of
right. They may be
happening.
Heat mapping where you're clicking, where you're reading, how far down the page you're reading. There's all kinds of analytics that they're trying to do against it.
Yes, and Eric, you and I both run websites. We have no idea who is clicking, but we can tell all the heat map information that you just described. That's all very trackable. That's, you can figure out. And then get a report back from Google Analytics, for example, or from MailChimp if you're running a mailing list and use MailChimp as your provider to deliver mail to your mailing list readers. They can tell you all that sort of information. I don't know, again, who necessarily.
Right.
Well, with MailChimp, I might, if it's a subscriber, I guess, I might know their email address or something. But, I don't. Certainly on the web, it's anonymous. I really don't know who.
Right.
And for broader internet stuff, it gets tricky trying to track it down to a specific person. A lot of us hide behind firewalls with network address translation, where our internal address on the inside of the firewall is different from the public address on the outside. Mm-hmm. And so you could have a bunch of people or an entire company, hundreds of people hiding behind one single address. And so it becomes harder to tell individuals, and so you have some anonymity there. And I guess with IPv6, that's going to change, right? And maybe on mobile networks, like if you're surfing with your phone, which a lot of people do, me included, you can be talking over your mobile network, LTE, and have an IPv6 address that you're not hiding behind.
Right.
It's your actual address.
Always public. Yeah.
So that'd be a little bit more known. But another thought here, if you travel, you move from place to place, there's different addresses that you're hiding behind. There's encryption now is becoming increasingly prevalent. So you surf a website, if someone is trying to watch your traffic as it goes by on the wire, like your internet service provider, they aren't the ones holding the website. They're just giving you the connection to the website. They can watch your traffic go by, but if it's encrypted, they don't know what's in there really. They might know what site you went to, and that's about it.
And the URL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know the page you asked for, but not like what you did in there, what specific articles necessarily.
Unless
depending
they have
on how they're
URLs,
loaded, there's
right.
a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of asterisks and gotchas, and it depends in there. So,
but the long and short that you're saying here is that it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, generating a report of my traffic or your traffic is, I wouldn't say it's impossible if everything was just right. That maybe is possible. It's pretty unlikely that someone could even do that to you.
The amount of effort.
And so I guess it comes back down again to what's really going on. There's a great quote from the Tech Dirt article that summarizes a lot of what Eric and I have been talking about here that I'll just read to you to explain this, because I think they just nailed it. So here's the quote. When ISPs or online services have your data and sell it, it doesn't mean that you can go to, say, AT&T and offer to buy all of whoever's browsing history. In the article, they use Louis Gomhert's browsing history because he was a congressman that was called on the carpet for his involvement in this whole thing. So instead, what happens is that these companies collect that data for themselves and then sell targeting. That is, when Gomhert goes to visit his favorite publication, that website will cast out to various marketplaces for bids on what ads to show. thanks to information tracking, like the cookies we were talking about earlier, it may throw up some demographic and interest data to the marketplace. So it may say that it has a page being viewed by a male from Texas who was recently visiting web pages about board games and cow farming to randomly choose some items. Then, from that marketplace, some advertisers' computerized algorithms will more or less say, well, I'm selling board games about cows in Texas, and therefore, this person's attention is worth 1/10 of a penny more to me than some other company that's selling board games about moose. And then the web page will display the ad about cow board games. All this happens in a split second before the page has fully loaded. At no point does the ad exchange or any of the advertisers know that this is Louis Gomherd, congressional representative, nor do they get any other info. They just know that if they are willing to spend the required amount to get the ad shown via the marketplace bidding mechanism, it will show up in front of someone who is somewhat more likely to be interested in the content. That's it. Again, I just thought they nailed it. That is, it's all about that, tracking. But what are they tracking? It's not about you. It's about what someone like you is interested in seeing or more likely to click on or react to and then end up buying something.
It's the concept in digital marketing of a persona, right? Where you have, okay, there are these kinds of people that visit our site. We want them to head to this type of content. So this type of person, we're going to drive them through a funnel of content to where we want them to end up. Advertising, it's all about personas. Well, okay, the soccer mom that has 2 kids in a minivan. Well, we need to sell toilet paper and, whatever. Like, that's our persona. Yeah. And that's very much what this is about, it sounds.
I watched this week's edition of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver on HBO, where they do their rather humorous take on the news, but it's serious too. And they did a segment on this story, and one of the things they covered were some of the companies that behind the scenes sell this sort of information. You were describing personas. I don't remember the exact name of the company, but they have something called clusters. Oh, you belong to cluster 61, so you probably live in the suburbs, you're probably of mixed race, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Based on their the trackers that were involved to build that profile, that persona, they would then deliver these certain ads to them in the hopes that they were properly targeted. And you're interested in yoga and organic food, and so we're going to deliver you those sorts of ads.
Yeah. Yep.
So Eric, my solution is I'm going to totally VPN all the things. Only
that won't help at all. No.
So what does VPN do? So VPN gets thrown up as a privacy thing. In fact, it stands for Virtual Private Network. And VPN technology, which you and I have both been using in real life for as long as we've been in IT, it is an encryption solution that puts all of your traffic into an encrypted tunnel, and it goes in from your computer and then pops out wherever the other end of the tunnel is. For you and I, as enterprise IT nerds, it probably pops out in our companies, and we would have our users that work for the company fire up the VPN, and then all their traffic is encrypted across the internet, arrives at the company where it's then decrypted, and they can do their work just like they're in the office.
Right.
That's the big idea here. So VPN as an internet privacy technology is you tunnel to some VPN server. No one at your ISP can see what you're doing because all they see is the tunnel traffic that's encrypted. They don't know what's inside there. Yay, everything's private now, right? No, because all you're really doing, that your traffic still got to pop out somewhere. In this case, your VPN service provider on the internet. Get decrypted at the VPN site, go to the web page you had originally requested. All you've done is basically put an encrypted hop and made it longer to go get the web page, but the exact same behavior, the trackers, the cookies, all the rest still work.
It all still works.
All you've done is made it harder for you to get the web page, essentially. It's just that's taking longer now.
There's more overhead. It's probably a little slower, but the same exact thing is happening.
Yep. So there is one thing I have spent some time with, Eric, that is helping with this, and I don't know if you have use your own flavor of tools, but mine is Ghostery, which I think maybe we've talked about on the show before. Ghostery is a Chrome plugin. It works with some other browsers as well. I use Chrome as my primary browser, so Ghostery will attempts to make you go more ghost-like is the intent, if you want to look at the name that way, and it will block ad trackers. It has a database of a whole lot of networks of noisy things, ad networks and trackers and analytics and things. And you can program it or set it in the settings to say what sorts of things you want it to block. And so you get some, anonymity that way. If you don't want to have Texas Cow board games marketed to you, even if that would be completely appropriate targeting, you can.
I'm in the market. That's all I'm saying.
You can use Ghostery and get some of your privacy back from the trackers. But I'll warn you, my experience with Ghostery is occasionally some pages just don't friggin' load at all.
Yeah, and you have to put exceptions in, probably.
You gotta trust the site. Maybe Ghostery's got this trust option if you really need the page. Ironically, one of the things where I found it breaks on occasion, or Ghostery will break a site on occasion, is when I'm trying to unsubscribe from a mailing list. So because I'm public and on the internet, I end up on an awful lot of marketing mailing lists and PR mailing lists and stuff. And so I'm unsubscribing multiple times per week. I'm trying to get off of some list. Sometimes I hit unsubscribe, nothing happens. Yeah. I get a URL in the browser window and a big blank page.
Because they're blocking the script that actually processes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I go, okay, Ghostery, trust the site. And then it loads this page and it's this like, you can't believe all the stuff that's in there. Ghostery is telling you, oh yeah, there are like 24 different networks. What? Of crap that's on these unsubscribe pages. It's horrible. It's horrible. Do you have a tool like this that you use?
So I use a couple of things. The first one is built into, we talked about Opera a while back. I actually use Opera a lot now. It has a built-in ad blocker and blocks anything that is considered tracky, addy, whatever. You can whitelist sites and things like that, but you actually get a little notification in the address bar where it'll tell you how many things it's blocked on this page since you arrived. And sometimes on some of the sites that, I go to read an article and it's like 46 things blocked. It's like, what in the world?
Scary.
And then when I'm using Chrome, I use uBlock Origin, which does largely the same thing. Those are more targeted towards blocking ads and Flash and things like that than specifically privacy-minded things like, it sounds like Ghostery is more geared toward. But I use a blocker. Advertising on the web has gotten out of hand. I assume I'm going to block ads on your site unless...
It has, and those sites with those compulsive links where you can't believe what Taylor Swift wore to the award show, those kind of sites. What happens is when those draw you in, they're intended to keep you clicking forever. They're intended to keep feeding you the junk food, the mental junk food content. A lot of times they're presented in slideshow format, for example. I've never had this happen to me ever.
Never.
No, I don't know from experience. And then you're just loading page after page of junk that is mining data, doing targeted ad delivery for you, et cetera, et cetera. It's awful. Awful stuff. And those sites you will see, like I've seen, you're talking about 40-something, I've seen similar in Ghostery where, it's like, how much crap could possibly be getting side-loaded onto this page? The actual content you want to read is the least part of what that page is actually delivering to your browser.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Boy, oh boy.
Okay, on to content I like. And Ethan, you went to see Ghost in the Shell.
I did. So this is the live-action version of the anime, a dearly loved anime by many nerds, sci-fi kind of folks. For those of you that have never heard of Ghost in the Shell and never watched the anime, there were several series of it in seasons within each series. Pretty long run, and it's heavy duty kind of action, cyberpunk sort of a vibe to it.
Kind of a commentary on AI and androids and cyborg tech and things like that.
Yeah, the baseline of the story is some human being has their consciousness moved into a robot body, and then they're part of an online world, on the one side, and a human world that they have a robot body to carry their sentience around in on the other. And in the storyline, they're part of a spy organization, if you will, that enforces the law and fights crime, and and so on and so on. Only it's a complex, for like many a grown-up aimed anime series, that highly complex,
deals with a lot of different subjects and moral
issues and and so on. And because it was so richly nuanced, let alone absolutely beautiful animation and an interesting storyline and futuristic, it had quite a following. And so now what we've got in 2017 is a live-action version of Ghost in the Shell starring Scarlett Johansson, who she's in all these sorts of movies, right? You know,
Right.
she was in Lucy a few
In
years
the
back,
Avengers.
which most people seem to hate. I liked it, but I'm the only one I know that actually liked Lucy. Anyway, and she's been in the Avengers, and so it wasn't surprising to see her cast in this role, and she was great. You know, I thought she was great as the Major. You know, as the main character there called Major.
Yep.
And so the movie itself was good if you knew what the anime was and were hoping it was going to be as good as that. It was not.
It's like watching the Hobbit movies when you've read the book. Like,
You know, well,
if you had never
the
seen
Hobbit,
the original or read the
not
original.
Lord of the Rings, but the Hobbit, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the Hobbit, for all the beauty of them, they were just so far off of the main story.
Yeah.
And didn't quite live up to the Lord of the Rings stuff. This was the Ghost in the Shell was a disappointment too, but in a little different way, because it lacked the complexity. It lacked the complex issues that are presented. It's still sci-fi and so on, but it just feels like we're getting so close to them that this stuff actually may matter soon. But robot sentience, morality concerns. How do you deal with life in this context, assuming it were possible? I mean, I know we're still hundreds of years away, let's presume, from being able to capture what's in a mushy human brain and be able to digitize it so you could carry that consciousness around and then have all the software infrastructure around it so that it would behave like a learning and growing and sort of a thing. But they didn't really get into that stuff too much.
Really?
It was part of the story, but it was...
They mostly left it alone, though.
Well, what the major's major subtext was trying to find out who she really was before she became, a human brain stuffed into a robot shell. So that was, but mostly because they'd messed with her memory, not because there's moral concerns and all of that. They left a lot of potentially interesting plot twists on the table that where they could have gone with it.
It sounds like they almost tried to inject humanity into a character that really in the anime wasn't really all that human.
Not really, no. And that's one of the things that you're constantly mystified by.
Yeah,
is
right.
exactly where's the line here.
Her detachment from her physical entity in the anime was one of the core driving things about it. And it sounds like they mostly left that alone and tried to make it more like, I need to find out who I am.
Yeah, they flipped it around on its head. She really wanted to know who she was and what her origins were, and she meets her mother at some point, and and so on. And the other side of it was Ghost in the Shell, the anime, the aspect of the cyberpunk, the Neil Stephenson Snow Crash kind of vibe, that whole being online and what it means to be online and the data streams and the hacking and all of that stuff. It was there, but it didn't. Unless they brought it up, you forgot that was part of what was going on.
Subtext.
Very much.
Not a core element.
And so it really, it was just kind of the whole cyberpunk piece of it was underplayed, which was a bummer to me. So on the plus side, it's a very watchable movie. The visuals are mind-blowingly good. I guess they spent $110 million making this movie, and it looks like it. Oh baby, this thing is just stunning. The cityscapes are amazing. There's a very futuristic Blade Runner kind of a vibe going on with the cityscapes. The action sequences are great and mercifully short, not let's do 25 minutes of things blowing up and people hitting each other, which just guys, please, in the superhero franchise, I'm bored with that. Let it go.
15 minutes of martial arts and
it's just, there
jumping
wasn't
off
that.
of walls.
There were definitely action scenes. There were definitely, guns getting fired and people hitting each other. That happened. But it wasn't like, little teeny bits of dialogue before the next scene where there's loud explosions and things blowing up. It wasn't that at all. So it was not endless mind-numbing action, which was, for me, fine. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Sometimes maybe that's the movie you're looking for, but I wanted something more out of this, and so that was good. It was PG-13. If you watch the anime, this could have very easily been a rated R movie. No problem.
Yep.
Depending on where they dialed up the violence, and so they kept it reasonable to appeal to a broader audience. And I think that was a good call on their part, just the way they played it out. So it gives them a chance to, bring your kid to the movie and not be worried about how bad it's going to be, because it was definitely showed some restraint. So
Sure.
while still being entertaining, kind of like it was an Avengers level of superhero style violence, if you will.
Okay.
So not grisly blood and
Yeah.
stuff, you know, all over the place.
Viscera.
But on the whole,
So you don't. I'm going to assume you don't regret going to see it.
I do not regret.
You don't
going
feel
to
like you
see it.
wasted your money, but at the same time, it didn't live up to your expectations.
And I got home, and my wife asked me, well, because she wasn't really interested, not her kind of film. She's like, well, what did you think? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's
conflicted.
kind of how I was left with. It was really odd.
Yeah.
Really odd feeling to have about the movie. But yeah, I mean, if you got nothing better to do on a Friday or Saturday night and want to go out to see a movie, you could do worse. You could do a lot worse. Just if you're a fan of the anime, this is not gonna be the thing you're happy about. You know, you got to take it on
You
its
got
own.
to
I think.
suspend that and allow it to be its own thing.
A bit,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of the visuals are very true to the anime. You'll be pleased there. But, again, on the other hand, we've kind of beat it to death now. A lot of the
Sure.
themes and sub-themes are lacking a bit. And I think you might be bummed out.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Well, you also watched something
So
last
I watched
night?
something
you said?
else. So I watched something last night that it impacted me so hard, I just wanted to raise it. So I like to be outdoors. I like to hike and ski and other things. So I watched the Red Bull channel. There's redbull.tv as a website, and on your Roku you can get the Red Bull app and watch stuff. And although you think Red Bull TV, that's like moron teenagers who smoke weed and ride skateboards, right?
That's my initial thought.
That is some of Red Bull. Absolutely, there is that aspect of it. But if you dig through the Red Bull catalog, what you find is there is a lot of interesting films and documentaries related to sports, yes, but gets away from that, stoner subculture that some of that channel caters to, and really gets you to some different places. And so there's a film I discovered last night. Well, I'll just back up a second. For one thing, I've been watching World Rally Cup. WRC is covered hours of it every rally on Red Bull TVs, and that's free. Just go watch World Rally if you like that. So in America, as far as I know, that's the only coverage there is.
I can't think
I've
of
lost
another way
track of it.
to watch it, yeah.
So anyway, and it's great coverage. So, but as I was watching the last rally, which was in Corsica, they were running some commercials for some other Red Bull content, and one of them was this film that I'm talking to you about now, Into the Mind. Into the Mind is one of these skiing, riding, snowboarding films. And if you've seen like a Warren Miller film where there's these beautiful, dramatic mountain shots,
Helicopter
helicopter drop them off the top of the mountain, they do these incredible runs and so on. It's a little bit of that, but it's so far beyond what they did with the cinematography. I cried at the end. The last scene moved me so much. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it right now. After watching this whole movie, it takes the film takes you through chapters, and every chapter is so gorgeously filmed in all these different places. They went to Canada and Alaska and Bolivia and over in Europe in various places, including the Matterhorn, and so they take you to all these stunning vistas, and they create a story out of it. So they weave in, the Into the Mind. The idea is when you're doing these very risky and complex sports and going to these very difficult to reach places, you have to be in a mental state that is so in tune to the physical world around you that you become one, or you don't make it. You may die. That's the subtext in this whole thing. And they take you through this whole cycle where in one of the scenes, someone doesn't do well coming down the slope and they almost die. They end up in the hospital. And then there's a rebirth scene. So you go through this whole set of being out in the wild and skiing and going in. And again, the shots through the whole thing are just amazing. It's a novel and original the way they filmed a lot of this stuff. They get you down to this very last scene, and it's this notion of seasons changing. And so they somehow weave in these shots of people skiing, and then it's turning into grass behind them, or it's grass, and then as they're skiing, it turns back into snow, and then it's water freezing and then unfreezing, and so it's time lapse and it's gradual changes, and it's done with music and in such a way that once you get to that at the end, and you're just overwhelmed by the whole thing if you really were in tune with it. And they'd gone to such lengths to make you as the viewer contemplate what it would be like to be in that situation. A lot of point of view shots, shots of like a skier looking down over the cornice of an extremely steep and dangerous slope he's about to tackle. A few girls, mostly guys, and then you're just breathing. Am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? Kind
that
of thing.
Moment.
That moment. And it pulls you in ways. Yes, there are those wow moments where they're doing jumps and whatever they're doing that's just amazing. Or there's a meter and a half of snow over the spruce trees, and they're skiing down basically over the top of the forest because there's so much snow that's fallen that's just gorgeous, and and so on. But it's not just a bunch of bros doing tricks at all. It's just completely anyway. Into the Mind was this movie. I was literally at the end with tears running down my face, feeling like an idiot. Because I just the ending sequences, just after seeing the rest of the film, had just
it pulled you in.
Oh,
yeah. Wow.
I mean, you can watch it for free. Go to Red Bull TV. There's a link in our show notes. You can go watch the thing in high def.
Awesome.
Now
I'm gonna have to do that.
And fantastic soundtrack too. Not just skater punk, guitars and drums going fast. I mean, very little of that. Just absolutely stunning, gorgeous music to go along with it. So
wow. Sounds fantastic.
Eric, did you learn anything today?
I did. Today I learned that there is a scientific measurement for the risk of death of any action, the micromort. If an activity is rated as 1 micromort, you would have a 1 in a million chance of dying while doing it. So running a marathon is around 7 micromorts, skydiving is 10, and climbing Mount Everest is 40,000 micromorts.
So 40,000 chances in a million, huh?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound too bad, considering it's Everest. But, not that that's good, but oh boy,
yeah,
oh boy. So what would that be like? About 4%? Math is hard, and there's a lot of zeros.
I guess so. Zeros complicate things.
Ugh. I've watched enough stuff on Everest that I know people definitely die up there.
It seems like it's more than 40,000 in a million that die. I think it's a much higher percentage actually. But anyway. Did you learn anything today, Ethan?
According to Wikipedia, Vantablack is a substance made of vertically aligned carbon nanotube arrays and is the blackest artificial substance known, absorbing up to 99.965% of radiation in the visible spectrum. You and I have both seen some pictures of stuff that have been covered in Vantablack, and it's like they're not there.
You swear it's Photoshop.
It's so weird.
It's like there's nothing there. Like someone's holding a ball of nothing.
So you guys in the universities that are looking for dark matter, it's just been painted Vantablack.
It's regular
matter. Search is over. It's fine.
Yeah. Regular matter painted with Vantablack. That's it. There, we solved it. Good job, Ethan.
Woo!
Our work here is done.
And that brings us to the end of the Citizens of Tech Show 66. A lot of ways that you can keep in touch with us. Reddit would be the best way. Go up to the Citizens of Tech sub and let us know that you're there. Say what you want to say. We do monitor that sub. It goes right into our Slack channel anytime anybody posts something. So feel free. You can also go there and upvote or downvote the articles that we post in there. That is part of how we select the scripts for the show. You can also reach us on Twitter at Citizens of Tech. We got a Facebook page and, of course, citizensoftech.com. That's where all the shows are. All of our scripts and show notes are there in their entirety for your viewing pleasure. And, hey, I'm sure there's some trackers and stuff up there, but we try to minimize that stuff. We don't know who you are, and we're not tracking you. We swear we're not like the others. So it's as clean a page as we can make it, mostly to make it easy for you to find our stuff. Again, at citizensoftech.com. I'm Ethan Banks at EC Banks. Eric is at Zutphen, Z-U-T-F-E-N, on Twitter, and we would appreciate if you'd follow us, tweet at us, let us know your thoughts about the show. And we'll see you next week.